there's quite a few interesting studies also showing us that in many cases, trauma correlates quite closely with chronic disease and obesity. And there was a specific study on adverse childhood experiences, which showed that you are more likely to be overweight and obese later on in life if you've experienced trauma in this way as a child, right? So there are some people who, for example, never feel like they never want to be in an abusive relationship ever again. So the strategy could easily be, and even from the subconscious mind, that if I put on weight, I'll no longer be attractive and I'll be safe. So I've often seen that the moment people start to process the emotional trauma, that the weight also starts to come up. So, we could ask a client here, instead of what are you eating, like what's eating you, right? So it could be a completely different angle here, although we're not, it's not necessarily our scope of practice to support them in that way. So it might be just as important, or it might be important to help them to figure out what type of support they need to be able to deal with or to work through the trauma. Okay. Number 7, what are you really hungry for? Right, so that's coming down to why are we eating? What's going on? Is it that you're stressed? Are you lonely? Are you bored? And unfortunately, many of us do use food for many different reasons, right? Even positive ones. When we're celebrating, we also use food. And that's okay. But we need to understand that. And we need to know that, it's not necessarily going to help us to keep on looking for the next diet book, right? To give us the solution, when that's really not what's going on. So do we need that next diet book, or do we need better strategies to manage stress or life, or, and something that's quite useful here is when you open up the fridge and you realize, I'm really not hungry now. It's non-hunger eating is coming up. Then you can just ask yourself the question, what am I feeling? What's going on? What do I need? What am I really hungry for? What's going on? And often the first time you ask it, what am I really hungry for? Like chocolate chip cookies, definitely. And then you have to ask yourself, no, what am I really, really hungry for? So often you just need to pause a little bit there, and for you to be able to maybe go a layer deeper to figure out, okay, I see, I've been indoors the whole day and I just need a break. I just need some fresh air. That's actually what's going on. I'm lonely. I've been sitting here and I just want some connection. Phone your mom, phone a friend, arrange for a coffee on Saturday, whatever. Just put other strategies in place as well to be able to manage life. And this is, as coaches, we support our clients to do that. The next one is lack of sleep. And this research I also find very interesting, because it shows that if we sleep 5.5 hours instead of 8, on average, people will eat 22% more calories the next day. What? Quite intense, eh? So 5 days of not sleeping well, you may eat a whole day's worth of calories, extra day. Right, so this is basically because if you don't sleep well, ghrelin, our hunger hormone, goes up, so you'll feel more hungry. And your satiety hormones actually go down, so you just never feel full. You might have experienced this before. And we tend to be more emotionally reactive in the brain. It's harder to say no to temptation, etc., etc. So many reasons why that might be true. So it might be that if this is the case for one of your clients, that we just need to support the client to figure out what it is that they need to get more sleep. It's maybe not even about changing anything else around nutrition or mindset or whatever. It could be just that they need sleep, right? Again, the second last one is eating real food. Is your client eating real food? Because we know that processed foods, unfortunately, many of them have an impact on our brain, and it stimulates the hormone dopamine, right? And what I mean by real food is foods that are something that you can plant, something that would be in your grandmother's pantry, something that has a mother. That's food, right? something that's as close to its natural state and that's instantly recognizable. Fish that looks like fish and vegetables that looks like vegetables. And I've seen so often that this is such a big game changer for many people. And this is something that could really lead to people not just losing weight, but also feeling better in every way, in mind, body, and heart. Because it, like I just said, it impacts our brain, it impacts our hunger and satiety signals, and it's quite addictive in some cases even. So anyone determined to eat healthily is really pitting themselves against teams of incredibly smart people who spend decades designing foods that are utterly irresistible to the human brain, right? So think of those chocolate bars, the crisp, the sweets, the salty, fatty meal combination. They've all been engineered to hammer at your hunger signals, and food manufacturers know, and you might have experienced this as well, that when you open that bag of crisps, that it will be extremely hard to stop eating them. I mean, I find that myself. Once that pack's open, it's difficult, right? And that one chunk of chocolate can so easily lead to just eating the whole bar. And it's messing with our brains. And they know this happens because these foods have been deliberately built that way. And when our foods contain flavors in certain combinations, the brain is going to release dopamine. And dopamine has a really powerful effect on our behavior, and it impacts the food choices in a big way that we make. Because once we've eaten these foods and we've experienced that bliss they provide, our brains will release dopamine, and even in anticipation of eating these foods again. So it's quite powerful. And this is because the way that dopamine works is it teaches us how to do important things, like satisfying our hunger, for example. So when we're eating, our brain releases dopamine in smaller quantities. But with these type of blissy foods, it's just on steroids, right? So it's like completely out of hand. And some people even call dopamine the learning molecule. So dopamine helps us to create intense feelings of reward. And this actually motivates us to repeat the same behavior, such as finding food, to satisfy hunger. But in this case, it's going to encourage us to eat those blissy foods over and over again. And in the junk food business, there's even a technical term called bliss point, right? And that describes that perfect combination of tastes and textures that makes a product irresistible. They've hit the nail on the head. It's like perfect. Okay. So some of these foods, unfortunately, damage our hunger signal. It stops us from feeling full. And some foods will increase your cravings or even overactivate the fat storing signal, So in this case, it might be important to support your client to see, could they at least include a bit more homemade options, right? Is it possible for them to maybe through the means of batch cooking or delegating or having someone cook the meals for them so that they don't have to be at the mercy of some of these blissy foods every day. Okay, and the last one that I want to touch on is when and how we eat. So when we eat can obviously be just as important as what we eat, because it's important to understand that the body also has daily rhythms, right? And when we eat, or if we eat out of sync with them, we could make it more likely that the body's going to put on excess weight if it's out of sync with your daily rhythms. And a lot of us also, when it comes to how we're eating, a lot of us feel constantly busy, and we never stop rushing around. And the result often is that we're not paying attention to the food that's in front of us. And when we do this, if you're not paying attention, we could easily, we're not mindful, so you can easily eat too much, or your body just doesn't process our food efficiently. If you're not there, if you're not present with your food, maybe you're even in a stress state, we can't absorb the nutrients in the same way, right? So once again, this can tie into point number 2, where, you could be nutritionally starved because you're not absorbing the nutrients in the way that you could. So just thinking of when you're running away from a lion, let's say, digestion is not priority. Think about it. You need glucose to run, to fight, to there's other priorities in the body. So if you're in a stressed state while you're eating in front of the laptop trying to meet deadlines, digestion is not priority. So you're not going to be able to digest, absorb the food in the way that you could. Okay. So eating mindfully can really help to decrease the hunger signal, and it can also result in even eating less while you're still feeling satisfied.